Okay, this video is going to cover how to get started on the building and testing part of the Fitness Challenge app in Activity 2.5. So if you are following along on our slideshow that's on Google Classroom, I'm on this last slide, 36, and what we're going to do is the part where you decide what type of file you're going to use, and then you get the correct components in there or modify the components that you're using so that you'll be ready to code. So the first thing that you need to do, if you haven't already, is you've got to decide if you are going to start a blank file and add in all the components, or if you are going to use an Activity 2.4 file. You are welcome to use your file, but you want to make sure that it worked. This was when we did the flu tracker. If it doesn't work, you can download a file that I put on Google Classroom that has the correct code in it. So it's this one right here, A2_4 for Activity 2.4 Disease Tracker Correct Code. So if you were to click on this and then download it to your computer, you can go back to AI and simply import it, and it would give you the correct code to use for this. Okay, I'm not going to actually do this part because I already have, but you would select your file and then just hit open, and it would pull it up for you. Okay, so once you get that in, which I'm going to pretend like I did it, here is my correct code file. What this is going to do is it will give you the basis for the Fitness Tracker app. So we want to keep this file intact so that we have it for something else. So we're going to do projects, save project as. And this is where you're going to call it Activity 2.5. Okay, you can put Fitness app on there if you want to. And then hit OK. So you have to be patient, and you'll see it work right here where the name changes, the file name changes. That helps right there. Okay. All right, so what we're doing essentially is we are taking this app that we had done a while back on monthly flu patients, and we're changing the components, modifying them so that we can use them for our fitness tracker, because the fitness tracker and this flu tracker have a lot of the same components. Now, if you have been working along with us in your notebook, okay, we started doing this back on 4A from mypltw.org and slide 29 of our class slideshow. This is where we took the time to go through the design elements, every design element that we were doing on the activity, and then looking at what has already been coded for the flu tracker and seeing how we could use that component and just modify it a little bit for this component, for this activity that we're doing, the fitness app. So you'll remember we talked about this in class, but one of the first things that we noticed is that in the flu tracker app we used a spinner for selecting the months. In the fitness tracker app, we're going to need a spinner to select the day of the week. So we can still use that component that's in there. We're just going to need to adjust it. Okay. So I'm going to switch back over there. And we're going to look here at the components. And I'm going to try to turn on that little pinpoint thing so you can see better, but I'm not sure it will work while I'm talking. I don't think it's going to. Not pulling it up. Okay, we can go on without it. I'll just try to circle my mouse around so you can see what I'm talking about. But we're going to start up here on components, and we're going to look at each individual component that's on the flu tracker app. We will then decide if we're going to need it for the fitness app, and if we do need it, we will rename it to the correct name, and we may need to change some properties. So that's what we're going to do now. So the first component is screen 1, and screen 1 is the screen. You'll notice that it has a title in it called Disease Tracker. Well, this is not a disease tracker anymore. We're going to be doing a fitness app here. So while I'm clicked on screen 1 here, I'm going to scroll down on properties until I see disease tracker for the title. I'm just going to get rid of the word disease and I'm going to put fitness in. And when I click off of it, you'll see that it updates. So I'm just going down this in order. Vertical arrangement, that's this section right here in green. And inside that vertical arrangement, we have a title label. That title is Track Monthly Flu Patients. Well, we are no longer doing monthly flu patients, so we're going to come down here on the properties side where it says text. And this is where you could put fitness tracker or name it whatever you would like to. I'm going to do what PLTW does, and they call it Let's Get Active. And again, when I click off, it will update it. All right, down to the next one. Here's a spacer, okay? Essentially what a spacer is a horizontal arrangement that has been used just to create some space between different components. We will actually come back and use this guy in a little bit, but just so you know, he is a horizontal arrangement and just renamed as a spacer. So now as we go down to horizontal arrangement 2, you'll see we have 3 things inside of it. We have the month spinner, we have the amount text box, and we have the add button, which is great for the flu app, but for the fitness app, we're going to need a day spinner. Then we're going to need an activity text box because that's where the user types in what type of activity they are recording or tracking. So for example, walking or elliptical or treadmill, something like that. And then they're also going to record the minutes that they did the activity. So they will actually need another text box in here that is for the duration, meaning how long they did the activity. So we'll be adding that back in just a minute. Now I'm getting all of this stuff from our design brief, which is on our class slideshow, but I'm going to pull up my PLTW real quick. So those of you that enjoy or prefer being out there, you can look at it and see what you're doing. Take me just a second to get there. I had this pulled up, but then I had to restart my computer. Something happened. Okay, so app creators, we're down on lesson 2, and we're down at activity 2.5. So I just wanted to show you that we are working down this design brief, the design requirements section, just step by step. Okay, so this tells us we need to include a pop-up display of the days of the week. I'm going to switch back to App Inventor. Here's my month spinner from the Flu app. What I need to do is come down here and press Rename, and I'm simply going to change that to Days Spinner. Now, once you do that, you have to make sure that you replace the months of the year with the days of the week. And that's going to be here in the Properties section, and where it has January, February, March, and so on. You're going to replace that with the days of the week. Now, you have to be careful here that your spelling is correct and that your days of the week, in between each one, you put a comma and a space. So it's Monday, comma, space, Tuesday, comma, space, just like that. Okay. Here on their prompt, you will notice it says select a month. We're going to just adjust that so that it works for the fitness app, and we're going to call it select a day. So that's all the changes we need to make on the day spinner. Then we're going to come down here to the amount text box. This is where, when we were working on the flu app, we were putting in the number of patients that had the flu for that month. Well, we don't need to do that on the fitness app. What we need to record is the activity that the person did. So we're going to come, make sure you're on amount text box, you'll rename it to Activity text box and hit OK. So while we are over here, we'll just take a second to glance down properties and see if there's anything we see that we need to change. Right now it doesn't look like it. And then our add button we will use, but if you switch back to your design brief, you will see that the user is not only going to put in the activity, but they're going to put how many minutes they were active. So we need to add in another text box here. So I'm going to take my add button and simply bring it outside of that horizontal arrangement, because having two text boxes here is going to take up the screen area. So back over here to user interface, you need a new text box. You drag it into this horizontal arrangement so that it's to the right of the activity text box. Okay. So now you have day spinner, activity text box, and what right now says text box 1. You'll rename it, and it will now be called duration text box. That's where they're going to record how many minutes they worked out. From here on the duration text box, we're going to take a look over here on the properties, and we'll see if there's anything we need to adjust. One thing that we will notice as we're working through this, once you deploy this to your app and start really thinking about the layout, you may want to make like this text box smaller, since it's clearly going to just have probably 3 to 4 digits in it. So it doesn't need to be as long as this activity section. So you really could make the width of this smaller, more like, I don't know, I'm just kind of playing with it. I'm going to put 50 pixels in there. Let's see how that works. I didn't quite take it. Let me try that again. Oh, I didn't hit OK, that's why. Okay, so then you could expand this activity text box and make it go a little bit bigger if you wanted to. Again, I'm going to worry about that a little bit later. Right now I'm just going to get the components in, rename them, and change the absolutely essential things on properties. And you can always adjust this to look the way you want it to. All right, so now we have our first 3 things in. We're going to look back over at our design brief. We've done this one, and these 2 were underneath of that. We need to calculate and display the total number of active minutes for the week, and we need to calculate and display the average number of active minutes for the week. So we will need to go back over, and this will take us just a little bit out of order here, but that's okay. We'll come down here to the total label. So right here it says total patients, which made sense when it was a flu app, but now it's fitness app. So we're going to click on that, go to the properties section, and where it says total patients, you're going to have total active MIN for minutes. And that's where we will show the total active minutes. Then average label, you're going to do a similar situation. You're going to call this one, and I'm going to abbreviate a little bit so we have some space. AVG for average active minutes per week. Okay, and that's where the average will show up, where the 0 shows up right now. Okay? All right, so back to the design brief. We now have done this all the way down to here. Okay. Then this is saying we need to have display the list of all the user entries. Okay. That's going to be in our component that is called data list view. Okay. This is where once we build our lists from the information that's entered, this is where that information will show up. So there's nothing we need to change right here, right now. But once you get working on yours, if you want to change the colors or the way it looks, you could totally do that. Okay, back to design brief. Okay, here's the one where we're going to need to add this in because there is nothing like this on the Flu app. So here we are supposed to let the user enter at least 2 pieces of demographic information, like name, age, grade, etc. You choose what you're going to have them enter. I'm going to enter the name and age. So if you're following along with me, this is what you would do, but you would call your text boxes whatever you're calling them. Mine's going to be name and age. I'm going to switch back, and just for simplicity reasons, I'm going to use this spacer 1 section. Remember I told you it's really a horizontal arrangement. Okay. So I'm going to put my 2 text boxes in here, and I'm going to have a submit button. So you're going to grab 2 text boxes, drop them inside what is called spacer 1. And we're going to need a button. Things are going to get really crowded here. Okay. And you can barely see my button. That's okay. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But inside spacer 1, we have text box 1, text box 2, and button 1. So on text box 1, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it name button. Then on the right-hand side in properties, I'm going to go down here. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry. I went down to button instead of text box. I meant to do the text box first. This should not be called name button. That should be called submit button. Sorry about that. The bell rang and I was listening to everything going out in the hall instead of paying attention to what I was doing. So that should be the submit button. And down here you can just put the text as submit here and bold font. And like I said, it may go off of your screen right now, and that's okay. We're going to adjust that in a little bit. So, sorry, back to text box 1. This is where you're going to rename it, and it's going to be your name text box. And if you come to the right-hand side on properties, we can give them a hint here, and we'll just say enter your name. Okay. Text box 2 is going to be age, so I'm going to rename it, and it's just going to be called age text box now. Down on the right-hand side, I can make it so that it is numbers only. It won't accept any text. And my hint can be enter your age. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and make the width of this guy quite a bit smaller because most people are going to use 2 digits for their age. Okay, we're not going to have many people in their hundreds. We might have some, but they're going to use 2 or 3 digits for their age. So this can be significantly smaller. Now you'll notice on your spacer that it looks smaller than what we have with our text box and our button. If you go back onto the spacer, mine, the height is at 20 pixels. I can change that to automatic and hit OK, and now it should fit in there better. Now this is just a little quirk, I think, once we deploy this to our tablets. I don't think this will look like it's on top of the age text box. If it is, we'll work on that when we get to it. So that takes care of the next section on the design brief. And now we have 2 other things we need to do. We need to display a random activity challenge when the user asks for one, and we need to allow the user to view the list of activity challenges. Okay. So this one will take us to a second screen. This one will take us to the activity challenge screen, which will be screen 2. This one will just be a random, I believe they code that as a button. I'm going to have to look real quick. I think that's coded as a button. But let me pull it up real quick so we can see. We have a sample solution for this that we can use. Let me get there. There it is. Okay, so they end up doing, let's take a look here. Okay, here's how they end up doing it. They're going to have an activity challenge button and an activity challenge label. Okay, and this will be down at spacer 2. So those will be activity challenge button, activity challenge label. Let's go ahead and do that right now while we're here. So I'm going to switch back, and we are working down here in spacer 2. So I'm going to grab a button and a label. Okay, so it looks like we're going to just put on the button. It looks like it's going to be a bigger button where we're actually going to put on there, click here for activity challenge. So this button we are going to rename activity challenge button. And let's go ahead and rename that label while we're here. Okay, so on the button, you want to put text for button 1 is going to be click here for activity challenge. Label 2, I think we're going to be taking that out because we're going to have just a random one pull up. Okay, just a random one will pull up there. And on theirs, they certainly made their button, let's go back up to the button. I think they probably made that bold. And they might have done some other things to make the button look nicer, which we can do a little bit later. Looks like they made the spacer bigger as well. Yeah, this spacer, I'm going to go ahead and change that to automatic height. Okay, that helps. Width is already automatic. And then we have our label inside there. And those are both automatic. That should work. Okay, so now I think the very last part that we're going to need to do is putting in the activity challenge screen. Okay, this is going to be what takes them to screen 2, which will list your 3 to 5 activity challenges for them. So here you will notice that a new horizontal arrangement was added in, and then a button taking them to the activity challenge screen goes inside of that one. View list of activity challenges. So we first need a horizontal arrangement, and that's going to go right below, right there. And on that horizontal arrangement, we are going to put a button, and we're going to rename that button View Activity Challenges button. That one has a long name. And the text for that button will be View Activity Challenges. I'm going to make that bold. And then again, we may need to adjust this a little bit once we deploy and see how it looks. But I think we now have all of our components in. Let's double check by going back to the brief. The last one is to allow the user to clear all data entered and clear all displays. And that's taken care of in the on the clear button. And so we're okay on that. All right, so that is getting your components looking the right way. The next video we'll talk about changing your coding.